Before we start this video, a large thank you to Lawrence, Monkey Scribe, Brammy, Nathan, and Mathis for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And as always, an immense thank you to Halo Burner for their continued support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is sincerely appreciated, my friend, and I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, today we are making our loading screen. We're making it so when we rest at a site of grace, we're not deleting and respawning game objects, but rather resetting them to save some memory. This will be really helpful if you have a lot of enemies in your game that you're resetting at once. So first I'm going to make an empty game object, my player UI. I'm going to make it the full size of the UI. I'm going to call it Loading Screen Manager. Next I'm going to make another game object. Do the same thing up here, hold Alt and make it the same size as the canvas. I'm going to call it Loading Screen. And then I'm going to make an image as a child component of this. Do the same thing, make it the full size. I'm going to set the image background to a darker color. So I'm not going to spend too much time making this look pretty, but I will make it functional. So we're going to call this background. And I am going to not make this a raycast target to save memory. I got this icon from, I believe it's called gameicons.net. They're free, by the way, and royalty free when you use them. But I'm just going to use this for the example. I'm going to make an image, place it in the bottom left corner of the loading screen. I'm going to call it loading icon. And I got an hourglass icon here for the loading screen. I'm going to set it to like 99 by 99 away from the bottom here. Set it to this icon. Looks good. And I'm going to rename this icon to loading icon 01. Alright, cool. So this will act as our loading screen. Now, I'm doing a loading screen on the player UI. If you want to see a separate scene loading screen, there's one called Designing a Loading Screen in Unity. It's a video by Game Dev Guide. It is amazing. I suggest you check it out. I'm going to be doing a simpler version though, where we just put it in the UI as an overlay. It's not going to be its own scene in between, so to speak. So we're going to continue on now, and I am going to add a script to the loading screen manager. I'm going to call this Player UI Loading Screen Manager. Now I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to delete the start and update functionality as is per tradition, drop in my namespace. And we're just going to have a couple of things here. This is going to be a very simple loading screen. It will do what it needs to do. So we're going to make a serializable field game object for the loading screen itself. So this is what we're going to enable and disable. And we're going to say using Unity Engine.ui. I believe we need to say this for the canvas group. So right below that, a serializable field component for the canvas group. Now, why are we using a canvas group? I'm sure many of you already know why we're using it, but just in case, I'll show you. So let's save this real fast. If we go back into the project, I'll just add this component here onto the loading screen itself. Now let's add canvas group, and watch, it has an alpha setting, so you can see we can fade out and in if you wanted to, the loading screen. So basically we're just using this to activate a fade feature, which just makes it look a little bit nicer, a bit more polished. So what I'm going to do is make a public void for activate loading screen and then a public void for deactivate loading screen. The way we're going to do this is you can fade it both ways if you want, but on activation I'm going to make it instantaneous, and on deactivation I'm going to make it fade. And the reason why I'm doing this is because some actions will happen very quickly, like teleporting to a site of grace, and if you want to make a fade on the activation for that too, you'd have to make a little bit of delay before you move your character or start doing things. Otherwise you will start seeing things before the loading screen drops down. So for just simplicity's sake, I'm going to not fade it in, but I am going to fade it out. But if you want to fade it in, just make a little delay using a coroutine or something before you start doing things when you activate the loading screen. So first I'm going to check to see if the loading screen is active, self, meaning the game object is active. And if it is, we're going to return because it's already active. If the loading screen is in process of deactivating, cancel it. We'll do that in a second when we make the coroutine. Then we're going to set the alpha of the canvas group to 1, so it's fully opaque. You cannot see through it, and we're going to enable the loading screen game object. That's it. That's all there is for the activate loading screen. Now for the deactivate loading screen, let's make a float for the delay. Why are we having a delay? Well, 1, things load so fast in our small scene in this game. I want to make sure it works. And 2, you might want to delay just in case. For example, after you pop in from a site of grace, if your camera or some other things in the area need to adjust or load in, you might want to give it that extra second. This isn't always the case, but just in case, it's good to have a buffer time. But for the sake of video, like I said, we need to see the loading screen actually working, and we don't have much in the scene, so it will almost be instant. So giving us a second verifies it is actually working. So let's make a private coroutine, fade loading screen coroutine. I'm going to say if fade loading screen coroutine is not equal null, we're going to return because it means it's already deactivating the screen. We don't need to run it again. It should not be called twice. So if it gets to this point, there's something weird going on. But this is kind of a fail-safe, so we're not running the same coroutine multiple times. Alright, so if the loading screen is not active, return. If we're already fading it, then simply return. Now, what if it's active, and we're not fading it. We're going to say fade loading screen coroutine is equal to start coroutine fade loading screen coroutine, which doesn't exist yet. So we're going to make this, or I just call it fade loading screen, honestly. All right, so this is going to be a coroutine. So we're going to say private IE numerator fade loading screen. All right, so what's going to go on here? Well, we're going to have to take the canvas group and fade it over a specific time that we want. So we're going to want a specific time, and we're going to want a delay. So let's make a float for the duration. This is how long it's going to take to fade from black to perfectly transparent. And then the delay before we actually start fading. So I'm going to say the duration is going to be 1 second, and the delay is whatever we pass. So again, the duration is how long the fade will take. The delay is the wait in seconds before the fade actually begins. So down here in fade loading screen, we're going to say loading screen dot set active is equal to true, just in case. And then right below this, we are going to do a couple things. The first, we're going to say if the duration is above 0, we're going to do the logic. Otherwise, we're just going to skip to the end. But the duration should always be above 0. We're going to say while the delay is greater than 0, we're going to say delay minus equals time.delta time. And that just means basically countdown in seconds using time.delta time. Then we're going to say yield return null. Make sure you put that yield return null in that while loop, or else you will have the coroutine not working. So next we're going to actually set the canvas group alpha here to 1 to make sure it's fully opaque before we start fading it out. Again, it should be already, but just in case, we're going to set it here to 1. And then we're going to say the elapsed time is equal to 0. So this is the time that's actually passed since we started fading it. And then we need to make another while loop here. And we're going to say while the elapsed time is less than the duration, we are going to simply say elapsed time is equal to plus equal time.delta time. So we're just basically going to count up until we're at the point of the duration. And then we're going to say canvas group.alpha is equal to math f lerp. We're going to lerp between the starting value is 1 for fully opaque. We want to get to 0. So we're going to say 1, 0, and then we're going to pass the elapsed time divided by the duration. And that's basically going to fade it perfectly for the time that you give it. Then we're going to say yield return null inside this while loop. Make sure you do that. That's important. Whoops, don't need this one up here. I can delete that. That looks good. So now we're just going to make a failsafe again, but this shouldn't matter. Don't worry. I'm going to put it here just in case. Canvas group.alpha is equal to 0. So if for some reason the count breaks, when this is over, it's just going to go to 0. And then we're going to say loading screen dot set active false. Okay, so we can say fade loading screen coroutine is equal to null, so we can actually run it again next time. Then we're going to say yield return null, and that is basically it for this loading screen coroutine. There's still another thing we have to do though. We have to keep track of if there's a loading operation happening. So we don't have anywhere to track that right now. And there's only one thing really that is a major loading operation outside of scene loading, and it's if we're loading our characters. So we're going to say while world AI manager dot instance dot is performing loading operation. This doesn't exist yet, by the way. We're going to simply yield return null. So we want to keep this loading screen up if the world AI manager is either resetting, respawning, or despawning characters. So let's go ahead and make a bool for that. So you could go get a bit more technical with this too, and you could kind of make like different loading operations and then put them in like some kind of scriptable formation and then check if the count is above 0 or whatever. But again, we don't need to do that right now because it's very simple. So we're going to keep it very simple. We're just going to use a bool. And we're going to basically make all these coroutines switch this loading operation to true. And then when they finish, they're going to switch it to false because you should never be running more than one of these at a time. So here we have reset all characters. This is actually a bad name for this because this is actually spawn all characters. So we're going to make a reset all characters as well. And we're going to change the spawn all characters. What's the difference? Well, we're going to call spawn all characters when the game starts. We're going to call reset all characters once they've already had their game objects spawned. So one just resets their stats and positions, one actually spawns them in. So let's make coroutines for all these two. Reset all characters coroutine, despawn all characters coroutine, and then spawn all characters coroutine. Now, I don't see a world where you really need to use the despawn all characters, but just in case, I'm going to make it here for you too so you have the logic. Let's also make the variable coroutines for all these. We can make sure we're not running more than one at a time, or rather, not running the same one multiple times. So a private coroutine spawn all characters coroutine. Then we're going to say despawn all characters coroutine, and then we'll have one for reset all characters. So let's rename this from reset all characters to spawn all characters, because that is a much more appropriate name. That's what it was, or that's what the code is actually doing. And now we can do this one first real quick, the spawn all characters. So is performing loader operation is true. We're not going to despawn characters. We can get rid of that. So let's just erase that. Now let's take this for each loop, and we're going to move that in there, but we're going to change it. We're also going to say if, this is under spawn all characters function, if spawn all characters coroutine does not equal null, stop coroutine, spawn all characters coroutine. Spawn all characters coroutine equals start coroutine, spawn all characters coroutine. This just makes sure we don't run it more than once at a time. We only want this thing to be running one time, not two times simultaneously. So now we have that, we can kind of change this. I'm going to go from a for each loop to a for loop in case the basically the list is modified anyway. That could give you an error, so a for each won't. So we can do a for won't, a for each will. We can do a for loop and check through all these characters, and all we're going to do is say AI characters spawners I dot attempt to spawn character. You can check for null here. You can say if AI characters I does not equal null, just in case it is. It should never be unless your spawner is breaking somehow, but if you want to, that's good. And I'm also going to do a yield return new wait for fixed update, just so we're only attempting to spawn one of these on each fixed update and not like 300 in a single frame, just to give the memory here a little bit of a break. So at the bottom then, we're going to say is performing loading operations equal to false. We're going to say yield return null, and that's basically it. So the despawning would be the inverse of this, as you can probably guess. So we can just kind of copy everything here from spawn all characters, and down in despawn all characters, we can paste it, and we can change some stuff. So you can see here, we're clearing the list, and we're despawning all of the network objects. So, like, spawning and despawning these every single time you rest is okay for a very small game, but if you got like 50 characters in your scene, or even like a dozen, honestly, you can start getting a little bit of like a lag spike when you do that. So it's best to just reset their stats when you're resting at the site of grace. Now, I'm going to paste everything in despawn characters. I'm going to do the same thing, but instead of referencing the AI character spawners, I'm going to reference the spawn in characters and actually despawn them. But once again, after this system's set up, I don't see a world where you're going to use this list to despawn every character in the game. Unless you have a different type of project and you're just using this as a framework, then I can totally see it. But here is how you would do it. And then your is performing load running operations equal to false, and then make sure you clear your spawning characters list at the end as well. And then you return null, and you are good to go. Again, giving it a fixed frame breathing room here, so it's not trying to despawn everything all at once. That would be a little bit hard on the memory. So, if you have a lot of characters anyway. Now, for resetting the characters, again, we can copy what we have here. But we're going to need to write a bit of additional logic here. So, basically, we're going to need to reset the character's stats, their position, and get them out of the dead animation if they have been dead. So we're going to say reset all characters coroutine. Then we're going to check for, now there's two ways to do this. I'll show you both. You could go with the spawning characters, and you could reference their AI character, and you could reference, let's say, revive character, if you have that there. I believe we have an empty function for that. It's called revive character. You can make one, so here's revive character. So you put your code in this. You could also optionally make one called reset character in case you want to be a little bit different, because revive might be used for something more generic, whereas reset brings them back to their starting position, it resets their states, yada yada yada. So we could say reset all character coroutine up here too. I'm just going to make the coroutine variable for that. Then down here I'm going to say in reset all characters, we'll do the same thing. But yeah, I'll show you a couple ways to do it, and I'll show you how I do it, and I'll explain why also, as I try to do with most things. So, spawn all characters becomes reset all characters, stop coroutine becomes stop coroutine, reset all characters, then it says reset all characters coroutine is equal to start coroutine, reset all characters coroutine. Alright, so now that's done, as I was saying, you could go in here, you could go to your AI character manager, you could make a generic function here for reset your character, but what I'm going to do is go to the AI characters spawner. So this is the thing that actually spawns our character. It might be setting its health depending on your project, it's setting its states, etc. And I'm just going to actually reference this, and instead of saying attempt to spawn character, I'm going to say reset character. So I'm going to call it from there. I just find it's neater. It makes more sense because that's where we're spawning it. And you can kind of set things up as you need to here. So you can reset the states if you wanted to. So we're going to say reset character. And let's say if you got, some enemies who spawn in sleeping or some who spawn in dead, then any kind of special spawning instructions is probably going to take place here. So this makes the most sense to call the reset as well. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to check for the instantiated object model, make sure it's not null, and then we're going to set the transform position of that to the spawn transform position that we did when we spawn it. Then we're going to make a private AI character manager variable for the AI character. On your attempt to spawn character, you can see we're getting component, but let's just say AI character is equal to instantiated object dot get component AI character. And then we could say if AI character does not equal null, we can basically say world AI manager dot add character to character spawn list, and we can pass our AI character variable. And now when we spawn the character, the AI character variable becomes populated, and then we can just reference down here the AI character from there. So what do we do down here? Well, we could say AI character dot AI character network manager and edit their health, or you could use the revive function again here if you wanted to. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to set everything here manually myself. So I'm going to say AI character network manager dot current health dot value is equal to max health. And then if they're dead, we want to make sure we get them out of the dead animation. And we want to make sure we toggle the is dead bool to false. So we're going to say AI character dot is dead dot value is equal to false. Then we're going to say AI character dot character animator manager, and we're going to play the empty animation on your action override, because again, that's where your dead animation should be, on your action override, and the empty state, if you're copying the tutorial, is called empty. Now we want to make sure they're not performing an action so they can continue to do stuff when they respawn. We want to make sure we're saying, no, you're not playing root motion, this is an empty animation. We're going to say you can rotate, you can move, you can run, and you can roll. So true, 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 true. And lastly, we only want to run this basically if the character is dead. Otherwise, we just don't need to call this play target action animation, because that does call a server RPC, and that does take up network data. So only check and do this if they're dead. All right, now dragging your loading screen game object and your canvas group here in your variables and save that. And next, I'm going to go over to the world save game manager. So you're here under load new game and new game. You can see they both call load world scene. So this is pretty simple. We're just literally going to call player UI manager.instance, and I forgot we didn't actually make a variable for our loading screen manager yet, so let's go do that. Go to your player UI manager. Go up here and make a hide in inspector. We're going to make a public player UI loading screen manager. And then we're going to say player UI loading screen manager is equal to get component and children. You've done this before. Make sure you hide inspector. You don't need to see it. We're going to say player UI loading screen manager. And now we can reference this from our world save game manager. We can say player UI loading screen manager dot activate loading screen. All right, cool. What about deactivating it? Well, go back to your loading screen. So in FLM, I do this when I can have a wishing well. So it's quite simple for me, but it's even simpler for us here because we're not climbing out of anything and no weird animations are happening. So go to your player UI loading screen manager and say using unity.scene management. And then on start, we're going to say scene manager.active scene changed plus equals, and just hit tab on your keyboard. This will auto create a function for you. And basically this is going to be called every time the scene is changed. So I'm going to call this on scene changed. And what we're going to do is simply activate our loading screen. So just like this. Now, if you want, you should probably make a check to make sure you're checking for the world scene and not the main menu scene. We're going to call it deactivate our loading screen. So let's go to load game, come in here now, and when we load the game, boom, there you go, and it fades out all nice. So that's pretty cool. So we're not done yet though. Let's go to the site of grace, because right now we're calling spawn all characters when we rest. So let's change that to reset all characters. And we need to make sure we actually try to pop this up when we travel. So this is quite simple too. Where we travel is down here, teleport to site of grace. So activate the loading screen right here, and then we can deactivate it with a delay of a second. Traveling is just going to teleport you across the world. Now, if you're reloading your enemies or you're loading in a new area here, basically check for a loading operation and do it similar to how we made our world AI loading operation. And then just deactivate it when the loading operation is done. So disable loading screen. Now, if your game is a bit bigger, you're probably going to take the time to load in an area and stuff. So it probably won't be just as simple as that, although it might be. So you can see here if I damage the character and I rest, he snaps back to the position, and his health should be at full. Let's just hit him just to make sure. So if I give him a poke here with the spear, and yes it is, but okay, there's a small thing here. The character HP bar is not resetting from the last damage he took, so let's go reset that. So let's make a function here, and basically we're going to just reset the HP bar, get rid of that last damage tick that we've had. So we're going to say AI character UI manager reset character HP bar. Now this is basically not a function right now, so let's go make that. And for those of you who are confused, the character UI manager HP bar is basically the HP bar that appears above your head. So you don't see your own if you're your own character, but you'll see your allies or the target you're hitting. So we're going to say if instantiate game object is equal to null, return. If AI character is equal to null, return. Just clean up the code a little bit. Otherwise, come down and run all this logic. Now go to your character UI manager, and we're going to make a simple function for reset character HP bar. And all you got to do is basically just reset the last damage that the AI took here. So old value, new value. I actually don't know why I'm writing this. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Nethlem's notes. This is different. You don't need this. You can erase that. It's my bad. So all we're going to do is say character HP bar. If character HP bar is equal to null, simply return. It should never be null though. Maybe in situations where you have a boss that doesn't have this over their head. So we're going to say character HP bar. We need to make this public. It's last damage taken, current damage taken, I believe. Yeah, current damage taken. Make this public and set it to 0. So we will say current damage taken is equal to 0. Save that. Now if I go into the game here real fast, boom, 109, cool. If I reset this now, he should snap back. He does. I should do 109 damage again, so let's just try this one more time. Boom, 109, cool, looks good. All right, so what happens if I were to travel? So if I go to the Beyond the Boss, boom, there you go, and it fades out. If I go back, boom, there you go, and it fades out. All right, let's do one more thing just for the polish. So the loading screen is a bit static right now. It's not good when it's static. Someone might think your game is frozen if you have long load times. So let's go ahead and go to the icon here and make this fade in and fade out repetitively. So I'm going to call this fade loading screen icon. Then we're going to open this up, delete the start and update functionality, drop in our namespace as is per tradition. I'm going to make this very simple. And I'm going to leave this as a thing for you to kind of think about. I'm going to use a thing here in a function I'll explain here in a moment. It's basically unscaled delta time. So using Unity Engine UI, serializable field, we're going to call upon an image component. That's going to be the actual icon we have in the player UI right now. That's what's going to fade in and out. We're going to make a private coroutine variable to make sure the coroutine is not being called multiple times. Fade coroutine. Next, we're going to do an onEnable. Whoops, went too far when I was out of the class. That's my bad. We're going to call onEnable and onDisable. So we're basically going to make a coroutine that loops itself infinitely while the game object is on, oscillating between fading in and fading out. So let's make a function here called fade UI image. We're going to say if fade coroutine does not equal null, we're going to do a stop coroutine. Not stop all coroutines, autocomplete. Stop coroutine, fade coroutine. Otherwise, we're going to say fade coroutine is equal to start coroutine, and then we're going to make a function name that we don't have created yet. So I'm going to call it, what am I going to call it? I guess I'll just call it fade UI image or fade coroutine. Let's just call it fade coroutine. Private IE numerator fade coroutine. Now we're going to make a bool for fade away. So is it fading away or is it fading back in? Now we're going to do a check first for if is fade away, else it's something else. So it's, I didn't try to rhyme there. If it's fading away, we're going to fade away the image. Otherwise, we're going to fade in the image. So we're going to say for, and we're going to say I is equal to 1, then I is greater than or equal to 0. We're going to do I minus equals time dot delta time. So I is equal to 1. If I is greater or equal to 0, then we're going to do I minus equals time dot unscaled delta time. So why am I using that? That's something to think about. Fade image dot color equals new color 111, and then I for the alpha. So this is actually going to determine how much it's faded in or out. Then we do a yield return null, so it actually doesn't break the coroutine. And then we're going to say fade coroutine is equal to start coroutine, and we're going to repeat this coroutine again, but we're going to say false. So it's not fading away, it's fading in. And whoops, this for loop up here should actually be not an integer, but a float. That's my bad. So it should be a float. Okay, so to Do the same thing here again now, but basically inverse it. So we're going to make the I equal to 0. It's going to say if I equals greater, less than or equal to 1, we're going to say I plus equals time dot unscaled delta time. Fade image equals color 1111 I, and then we're going to start it again, but we're going to say true. So it's going to basically infinitely repeat until this loading screen is deactivated, because we're going to start by passing true, by the way, in our fade UI image, because it starts off as fully opaque. And then we're going to say on disable if fade coroutine does not equal null, stop all coroutines, and on enable, sorry, not stop all coroutines, stop coroutine, fade coroutine. And then on enable, we're going to start it up by calling fade UI image. So every time it starts, it's going to start this coroutine and do it infinitely until it's disabled, at which point it's going to stop the coroutine and cease doing what it's doing. So it's dragging our UI image right there like so. And save that. And now from the main menu, load game, go down, and boom, you can see our icon is fading. Look at that, looks real nice. Now if I were to travel again too and start this site of grace, just going to do a rest here, and I'm going to do a travel, boom, fade in, fade out, there you go. So you got yourselves a loading screen. So why is it, do you think, I used unscaled delta time at the end of that loading screen for the fade icon? I'm sure one of you guys knows. If you know, give me an answer in the comments. If you want to know, just let me know in the comments and I will reply. Alright everybody, thank you for joining me again this weekend. I hope you all have a very lovely weekend, and I hope you all have some very lovely holidays if you are celebrating. As always, an immense thank you to my patrons. You guys keep the lights on and you keep the videos coming, so you have my greatest and sincerest gratitude. Alright guys, that's it for me. See you next time.